You're listening to Mountain Heartbeat with Joe and Rosa Hopkins, proclaiming the gospel through word and through song.
Hi, and welcome to Mountain Heartbeat. I'm Joe Hopkins. In this episode, Rosa interviews Jamie Amerine, whose book, Stolen Jesus, is out now, available wherever books are sold.
Hi, and welcome to Mountain Heartbeat with Joe and Rosa Hopkins. Today on our program, we are going to have author and writer Jamie Amerine. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure. And so our program centers on choosing life or finding redemption after making choices that, resulted in abortion and things like that. But part of the conversation that sometimes gets left out when choosing life and choosing to respect the sanctity of life that God has created is foster care and adoption. They're necessary conversations. And so our current guest has had experience with both. And if I could ask you to just tell us a little bit about how your journey began. Did you feel a calling from God to go into that? And just tell us a little bit about your personal journey with that.
Well, I actually, for as long as I can remember, had an interest in adoption. When I was in the 5th grade, I had a teacher that I really, really cared about a lot. Probably one of the only teachers I had that I cared a lot about. And halfway through it was actually fourth grade year, she got an adoption placement that she'd been waiting for a long time, and left mid-year so that she could be at home with this baby girl. And I remember my mom taking me to see her and see this baby. And interestingly enough, was with the same agency that we ended up adopting our first adoption through. But it just fascinated me. And so then when Justin and I think we had our 3 oldest, we hadn't had Sophie yet, our youngest biological daughter. Someone approached us at church and asked us if we might consider talking to their daughter who was pregnant about possibly adopting her baby. And we met with her a couple times, and she ended up keeping her. And then we had another incident with somebody that approached us that knew of a mother that was dying that had just given birth, and we pursued that little boy. He was actually very sick, and he ended up going into the system, and we don't know what happened to him. But then it was after my brother-in-law died in a car accident, I just told Justin that I really felt, my husband, that I really felt like I wanted to still do that. And we had been pretty much finished having babies, and we had our 4 biological kids, and I just told him I wanted to look into it. And from the day that I told him that, it was 9 months to the day that we picked up Sam. And Sam had actually been in foster care for 10 days while they were trying to find a forever home for him. And it was over the Christmas holiday, so as soon as that was settled, we went and picked him up, and it was love at first sight, and just he was absolutely so much fun and such a blessing. But we almost instantly felt like he was lonely. He was so much younger than our biological children, and so we knew a few people that had done foster care and adoption, and so we decided to pursue that route. And we just had kind of a debacle after debacle that went on with that. There was actually 2 little girls that we thought we were just going to be able to do instant foster care and then adopt them. And we moved into a different house to accommodate the size of our family if we were to get them. And right after we moved, they were moved to another city and adopted by another family. Just several different things that went on. And then, and we were foster to adopt. So I'm always really careful to confess this, but that was my out, because I knew that I was playing God. It was like, well, we're not just going to do foster care because then I could get hurt, is what I would say. And people say that to me all the time. Well, I'm afraid to get hurt. So that was my thing, is I was afraid to get hurt. So I was just going to do foster to adopt, and then that way I couldn't get hurt. And then in March of 2015, we got our phone call in the middle of the night, and it was our caseworker, and she said, there's a little boy here at the hospital, a little tiny guy, 3 months old. He's very badly injured, and I wondered if you'd come sit with him, with the possibility of him coming home with you. And I said, is he adoptable? And she said, well, I don't know if he's adoptable, but he's here by himself, and he's very badly injured. And that was the first time that I think I said it out loud. Well, I could get hurt without thinking about who I was saying it to, and that was a child that was hurt. And so I said, I'll be right there. And I changed really quick and drove up to the hospital and sat and held him all night. I read to him from a book called Pure Joy, calling the heart of a child to the love of Scripture. And I always joke that he never took his eyes off me, which was either the Holy Spirit or the morphine drip. And he came home with us 2 days later, and it was a very long 2 years of not knowing what was going to happen, not knowing necessarily that it was best for him to stay with us or for him to go be restored to his family. I learned a lot about myself and about brokenness, my own brokenness, other people's brokenness, how God saw us in that brokenness, what he was able to do, and at 0 hour, it ended up that he is now our son. So we adopted him. It's been a year ago this Halloween. He was adopted by us. In the midst of that, we did take another placement, a little girl that we called on Facebook and stuff, Joy Baby. Mm-hmm. We had her for 18 months, and I can honestly say that that is one of the hardest stories for me to tell. I absolutely still love and adore that little girl, and I love and adore her mother just as much. And as much as I miss her, and as hard as it was to lose her after 18 months, my heart rejoices that we serve a God of restoration, and that he restored her family, and that she's with her mother now. So that's been our story. We left after Joy Baby was removed. She'd been with us for 18 months, and then she and her mom moved out of state. And we'd been in the Abilene area for 25 years, and my book was launching, and I just asked my husband if we could have a fresh start and maybe be closer to my parents, and I was shocked when he said yes. And so we limped on out of Abilene and are in the Houston area. We have not decided exactly what to do with our foster license because it's much needed in this area. But right now we're kind of in a season of healing and rest. It's very hard. I don't make light of it at all. It's very hard, and we are grieving. As happy as we are for Joy Baby and her mom, it's hard, and we miss her.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned in there that you were launching your book, and you have recently released Stolen Jesus. Can you tell us a little bit, tell our listeners where the impetus to write the book came from, what the message behind it is, and just what it's about?
Actually, I wrote a book called Sacred Ground, Sticky Floors, and I wrote that right after we got Charlie. I wrote it in 60,000 words in 9 days. And then I tried to get it published just like almost half-heartedly because I wasn't even an author. I didn't even own a computer. I borrowed my husband's. And my dad and mom sent me to a writer's conference to try and get it published. And while I was there, they said that I needed to blog if I wanted to get published. I didn't really have much of an interest in that, but I went ahead and started one, and I named it the same thing, Sacred Ground, Sticky Floors. That book was really had a lot to do with parenting and restoration and brokenness. And in the midst of that, I have a tendency to refer to these Jesuses, one of them being Stolen Jesus, which is actually a picture that I stole from a local local YMCA of Jesus that we hang over our mantle, and I talked to him. And then it just kind of came together, and my agent, Jessie Kirkland, and I were talking one day, and she was pitching Sacred Ground Sticky Floors, and she just said, I really feel like you have a second book in you. I think it'd be easier for me to pitch 2 books. Have you ever thought about writing Stolen Jesus as a book? And we were actually in the midst of not knowing for sure if we were going to get to keep Charlie, and right at the end of that, and right at the beginning of Joy Baby's story, and I sat down and was utterly undone by how God opened my eyes to who he is. It actually, one huge part of my freedom walk, in all the brokenness that I was seeing in foster care and in these different lives, drug addictions and just hurt, my own hurt, everyone else's hurt. I was working on one chapter, and I went in my closet, and I just fell apart crying. And I asked him how he picked. How do you pick? Who's the better parent? Who's the better parent, the foster mom or these families that want their babies back or, have made these mistakes? Who do you pick? Because I know my mistakes, and I know my folly, and I know that just because I'm the foster mom and everybody at church thinks I'm great, I know the truth about myself. And I know I'm just walking wounded too, so how do you pick? And I just all but audibly heard him say, I pick all of you. I want restoration for all of you. And that's what I want, is restoration for all of you. And I really was set free during the writing of Stolen Jesus. It was, it's my whole heart, and I love it. And I look forward to seeing other people set free in it. But then my second book is actually Sacred Ground Sticky Floors, and it comes out next October, and it's more of a parenting journey and our identity in Jesus Christ rather than our identity in who our children are. And so...
Absolutely. Yeah. And you talk about the different Jesuses and in your book. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Where does that come from? And who are those different Jesuses, and what sort of effect does that have?
Well, so it basically is that different pieces of his character are actually not his character, or the things that I made up about him. And one of them being actually 5th grade Jesus, when my teacher left, that I talked about earlier in this interview, where she left for the adoption. And I ended up with a teacher that was less than kind, and then had some scenarios that were really harsh at about the same time that I was baptized and saved. And then had to be held back. And so I didn't get to go to the 5th grade. I had to stay back into the 4th grade. And when that happened, I lost all of my friends. And so I didn't have all these little girls that were my friends and that had been there when I got baptized and had this party for me, and they were, my sisters in Christ, all of a sudden wouldn't talk to me anymore. So I made up 5th grade Jesus. 5th grade Jesus was this Jesus that was all about being with the in crowd and that made straight A's, and that's how you were approved of. And it wasn't actually until I read the book that I realized that I had this image of Jesus that was a taskmaster, librarian type that expected me to make good grades and be a good girl, or else I wasn't accepted. And then it just kind of filtered into a high school Jesus where when I didn't fit in at certain places, or the mean girls were doing one thing, and then I'd see them in church the next Sunday, and they were not the mean girls anymore, but outside of church they weren't. And so I just created all of these Jesuses. And then, by the grace of God, he started revealing himself during the writing process. And when I say the grace of God, literally the grace of God, I had never heard the message of grace and the message that he adored me and that I was saved and that the blood worked and that I didn't have to do anything else to make him love me. I didn't have to make straight A's. I didn't have to do all the things that I was doing trying to impress him. And that he was a good father and that he was totally available to me. And that's how the book evolved. And it actually all happened while I was writing the book. And so that was even makes it even more special to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if it was your experience, but I grew up with the Jehovah's Witnesses, and our Bible didn't have the word grace in it. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, no, it's not in there. And so grace was something I actually consulted a dictionary several years ago to find out what is that. And so, no, I understand that as well. And I had not heard the tune Amazing Grace until I became a Christian, and even though I didn't know what it was, how sweet the sound. Well, I mean, it was totally confusing. I had no idea what that was. And so for me, living in grace is something I haven't even mastered. I've just basically started recently to touch the surface of it, because I do still feel very much that you have a quota and you have to do, produce. So I totally am there, totally understand. And I can't say I'm actually free from that, because it's one mindset, and you're trying to find this other mindset, and you're reading the Bible completely new, completely with a new set of fresh eyes. So totally
grace
get
glasses.
that.
I have a friend that calls it grace glasses. Your grace glasses, put your grace glasses on, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, wow, how did I miss that? But it's little tiny things like nothing can separate you from the love of Jesus Christ. Nothing. And we say that, that comes out of our mouths. Nothing can separate you from the love of Jesus. But, and then there's this litany of things that possibly could, that, the world is telling you that you can't get over, that surely that's not covered by grace. Surely that's not covered by grace. Surely there's something that you have to be doing. Surely there's a list somewhere along the way that we can check off that's going to make us feel better about ourselves, and that's going to add to the power of the cross. And when you say it like that, I think that's when it's all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, if it's anything more than the cross, why the cross? I mean, why this brutal slaying of this beautiful, beautiful God that loves us, his son? Why would he go to such extremes if it was going to take anything else but just that?
Right, exactly. And I can even sit here and intellectually assent to that, and it is true. I don't live like it's true. And
it's a very hard habit to break, and so that is, and that's the number one thing that people ask me, how do I undo this? And I'm like, you have to do nothing, and it's very hard because we're used to doing something.
Exactly, and there's an anxiety too that comes with not doing anything.
Yeah.
You feel like if you fall from your position of always producing, that I lost my train of thought, that basically that's your only currency with God. Basically, is your value comes from what you are able to do for him. And it's silly, because what does God need from you? There's a verse that says, if I were hungry, would I tell you? He owns absolutely everything we have comes from him, but it's a mindset. And I truly hope and I pray that your book goes a long way towards undoing that, because as children of God in the kingdom, there's so much more. It's like we're living in black and white and technicolors available to us. And I sense that the more that I glimpse his grace, the more that I sense that he's just saying, I just want to love you. You're my child. And I'm just like, no, I know that, but wait, let me do this for you. And now that I have a child of my own, I sense that with my own baby. If she were trying to work to earn love, I would say, no, sweet baby. I loved you before you were ever even in my belly. I loved you. I love the idea of you. And I just love you more every day. And I think, is God not a better parent than me? And so I
know, that's my thing. I'm so into that right now, is, do I really think I'm better at this than God?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I do see the journey. I think so many people relate to the things that you talk about, like about dieting. Good Lord, every time that fails. And for example, I know, and we're being a bit chatty, and I hope our listeners, I hope that it's okay with everybody.
I'm sure they can.
But every once in a while, I'll buy a bag of potato chips, and I will tell myself that this time I'm just going to have a handful. And what happens is I eat the whole bag every single time. And so, as long as I don't buy a bag of chips, I'm okay with God. I know this. I'm okay. And in my mind, in my twisted thinking, I know that I'm okay as long as I don't buy them. But every once in a while, I'll think like, well, it won't hurt. So this one time, so I'll come in with a bag of chips, and then that feeling afterward. That's the whole, oh my God, I failed. I ruined it. I did it again. I can't face him. And it sounds ridiculous, but that's what it is and there's other things with me, but so that's
There's
a
so
food
many
issue.
people, and that's just true. And too, and it's also made up because are there potato chips in the Bible? And under the law, I mean, okay, there was gluttony and false idol worship and all those other things. But if those things are dead and there's nothing that separates you from the love of God, is that something? And seriously, with your daughter, if she ate a bag of potato chips, would it separate you from her in any form or fashion to the extent that we let it separate us from him?
No, that's ridiculous. No, it absolutely
It's ridiculous.
wouldn't.
And yet we treat him like that. So basically we're treating him like he's ridiculous. And I didn't realize that all this time. I've really have treated him like he's up there just going, oh, this woman is going to be my last. She's going to be the death of me. She'll be the last straw.
Right.
Like with the Holocaust or, child sex trafficking or starving children, Jamie Amerine and her potato chip consumption, that'll be it. And it's ridiculous. But it's actually kind of funny because if you think about it, and I say this, I have low self-esteem, except for when it comes to what I think God thinks of me as far as how awful I am. Mm-hmm. And then I think that I could very well end the world, or I did think that I was it. I was the last straw, that I was so awful. And that's the mindset that so many women have about so many things that they've gone through or done. That was the last straw for him. There's no way that he would forgive me. And sometimes it's based on, I think a lot of that comes from bad parenting or seeing bad parents. But if you look at it from our parents, like I have great parents, so I don't actually have an excuse for that. But I look at it from the way that I parent, and I parent like a boss. I mean, I'm not perfect, but I love my kids, and I have gone to great lengths to school them, to nurture them, to make sure that they're well fed, to make sure that they're healthy, to make sure that they're clothed. I've done all of these things, and there has yet to be a last straw. And there's been some stupid stuff going on here. I mean, some really stupid stuff. Mm-hmm. And yet I think that he has such low tolerance for my folly.
Yeah.
It's just robbing us of his. He's of such grand character, and this just like my whole chest just tightened up saying this stuff to you because it's so sad, Rosa. Mm-hmm. He's here. He's so fully here to restore us in our brokenness and in our mistakes and little mistakes, big mistakes, all of them. Nothing can separate us from the love of Jesus Christ.
Absolutely. And, I'm not a Christian man, obviously, so I can't speak for men. So men, if you're listening, I'm sorry, I can't relate to whatever struggle you may have. With Christian women, I see this, and I personally see this every single day. I see it on social media. I see it when I'm at church, when I'm at functions. I'm a gospel singer as well, so I go to many, many fellowships, so I'm not just speaking at one particular place. I see Christian women absolutely unable to rest, unable to believe that Father God loves them. It is rampant, and it keeps them stuck. And it also keeps us in this sort of, what would you call it? I don't want to say it in an insulting way because I don't mean it in a bad way, but just almost like this, I'm thinking the word is upwardly mobile, but it's sort of like this striving, this grasping that when I get there, when I arrive, when I get the right handbag and the right shoes and the right SUV and the right house, that it's almost like they feel they've got to present this great front in order to present God and Christianity. And it's so absolutely strange. I mean, if you think about it, he was a homeless carpenter, and Judea was occupied by the Roman government at that time, so Jews were not esteemed, and he wasn't esteemed among his people. And we create this entire mindset, and I think there's a lot of hurt under that for Christian women. I'm sure you've seen that too.
Hurt. And so much fatigue.
Yes.
So much just genuine exhaustion. Not even, and I think that's what I look back on now, and you and I talked about this because with I have an autoimmune disease, and I deal with chronic fatigue, but my fatigue now is so much different than it was when it was coupled with guilt. Mm-hmm. Because it was fatigue and guilt fatigue. constantly berating myself for what a loser I was because I was sick. Something that I didn't create. I mean, didn't have. And if I went to my dad, who I did go to my dad on several occasions, and was like, I'm so sick, I can barely function, he was always so concerned, so worried, and so willing to do whatever it took. He paid for, IV treatments, and he wanted me to be better. He wanted me to be well. And there was no condemnation there. There was nothing about what he was offering me that was ugly. And yet, when I prayed, it was always about how sorry I was such a loser, how sorry I was fat, how sorry I was lazy. And since I've fallen into the arms of grace, and I go to bed at 8 o'clock when my little ones go to bed, and I sleep 12 hours, and I wake up and visit with God a little bit and talk about what it's like to not be fully well, but know that I'm loved and cared for. If you take away that cloak, the darkness that goes with any condemnation or guilt, that is removed, already you're healthier.
Yeah.
Already you're feeling better.
And I think you just hit on that too with the no condemnation. That's what we're feeling in Christianity is condemned.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's miserable. It's a miserable existence, and if there's no it's literally in Scripture. There is no condemnation for those in Christ, and yet we put that on, and especially as women, it's like part of our beauty repertoire is this cloak of condemnation and our awfulness and how we're going to fix it and how sorry we are, which is the next study that we can go to so that we can overcome. And he overcame it on the cross, and he offers it to us freely. And it has been a process. I mean, I finished writing Stolen Jesus. I want to say that the final edits would have been like in February. And that feeling of just, there's not really anything else for me to do. And just kind of sitting with him, not having to, but sitting with him and talking about not feeling well, or my concerns about the babies, or, even the foster care thing. There was just a twinge of when Joy Baby was removed, the feeling that I needed to do it again, and instantly knowing, no, this is where you grieve. This is where you rest. This is our time, and there's other people that I can count on to do this, and right now you're just going to rest. And I've done that, and without guilt, and it's been nice,
Absolutely. And even physically, your body needs that rest, because everyone knows that stress is so bad for us. And I do think that you absolutely hit the nail on the head. Condemnation is what keeps us as Christian women going and going, even when we're beyond exhausted. And physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, we just need to rest. And how beautiful that is. And I absolutely know that is going to help set the captives free, because it changes it from I have to I'm not condemned. There is no condemnation. And we hear it all the time, but I don't think it really penetrates into our hearts deeply. So that is absolutely beautiful. And I'm sure that somehow fits in line with Americanized Jesus. Can you tell us a little bit about what he looks like, and what he's about, what he does, and what that's doing to Christianity to have that belief?
Well, he's got 501s and a mortgage, and he's kind of a taskmaster. He's about achievement also. But the thing that I always say with Americanized Jesus is that I kind of he has a dose of guilt where there's affluence and you want the affluence. He's the genie in the bottle Jesus, or you rub the lamp and pray for more queso on your nachos, and then you have guilt. There's like this guilty association. Oh, we have so much, and we're so greedy, and we're so awful, and we're so this, and we're so that. And then the reality of it is, he knows exactly where I live. He knows that this is where I landed. He knows I don't live in a grass hut, and affluence can be a cross to bear, or it can be a blessing, but there is no condemnation in Jesus Christ. So if I'm one with him, and if I'm hanging out with him, and I'm seeking him wholeheartedly, he's going to guide me in ways that bless other people. And and to a peaceful life, a life that is peaceful in an abundance. And, you get that, you hear that abundance, and then people start freaking out thinking that you're talking about, a prosperity gospel. But the abundance is Him. His will is Him. And I can have nothing, and He's still the abundance. And He knows where I am. He knows where I live, and I don't have to feel guilty about being in the United States. And I don't have to be afraid of Him, and I don't have to put on the cloak of condemnation, and I don't have to, He's consistent. He's exactly who I need. He's exactly who you need, and He's consistent. But He meets us each where we're at, and He knows where we are. And I really do think for the longest time that I thought, like, I had to move into a tent somewhere before He'd be pleased with me. But He knows where He planted me, and He knows who needs what and where they need it, So I think that some of the stuff that we take on as almost like a cross to bear, or if we don't, where we think we don't have a cross to bear, is maybe more of it. And then we just stack on more guilt. Well, I'm not doing anything. And people used to say that to me all the time. Well, at least you're doing something. Well, you're doing something. Ask Him what He needs you to do. And He knows where you are. He knows if your neighbor needs dinner. He knows how you can bless. He knows how you can grow and thrive. And He doesn't necessarily, by any means, need us. But I believe He wanted us, or else He wouldn't have gone to the cross for us.
Absolutely. And so I think there are many things in the book that people can relate to. It's funny, it's relatable, and it's not coming from a holier-than-thou position at all. It's coming from a position of having struggled with all of these different things, and then meeting the real Jesus. Can you tell us a little bit about that, meeting real Jesus, and what that looks like?
Well, the main thing is I try and be really careful, because I think for so long we've got everybody explaining Him to us, and so then you get everybody else's interpretation of Him, and you're just kind of puzzle piecing Him together. But I like to explain it like this, like when you had your daughter, you wouldn't have gone and put her in a corner and then read books about her and had other people explain her to you. You went and spent time with her,
Right.
You had to get to know her. And we have so much information and so many interpretations and so many religiosities that we get caught up in, and so many hurts and so much baggage that He's muddied by that. So I think that the most important thing, and sometimes I don't even think it includes the Bible, which I know offends some people, but I think sometimes it's even maybe just a verse, or maybe just sitting with, I'm sitting here in front of my stolen Jesus now, just sitting and just letting Him, when I say this in my book, and I say it a lot, letting Jesus be Jesus, and instead of trying to make Him be something that fits your political views or your religious views or anything else, just letting Jesus be Jesus, and letting His character kind of penetrate everything about what you knew about Him. And it is, it's an undoing, and it's very real. And like, I'm talking about it now, so my chest gets hot, my hands are sweating. It's like, it's not, and I almost hate that I said that, because I always used to compare myself. Well, it seems like they're having this, or they're having this, or
right.
they're having this. But it really is. If you were just getting to know someone, I think that that's the thing that people need to really think about, is instead of taking a study, instead of delving into Scripture or trying to figure out what that was said in Hebrew or anything else, but just sitting with someone, and that someone being Jesus, and just going, okay, show me what I believed that was wrong. Show me what I believe that's right. Show me your true character. And then just sitting with Him. And I sometimes, because my brain never shuts off, when I sit with Him, sometimes I'll just start out just by going, Jesus, 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 Jesus. There's power in His name. There's no other thought that can penetrate when you're saying His name over and over again, until I relax and calm down and just experiencing Jesus. You can't get too much of Him. You can't get overboard on Him. And, I could come to you from a place of piety, and I've been in that place of piety when it comes to him. And it's ugly. And it is really the only thing that he spoke out against was the Pharisees. Mm-hmm. But when you're with him and you start to really get to know him without the religiosities, without the memory work, without Sharpies or colored pencils or anything, you're just sitting with him like you would your son or daughter or your mom or dad in the purest form, something happens and you're different. And I've been saved for a long time, but I didn't know him until recently.
Right. No, I understand what you're saying about that, and I think there's a lot that I could say, and I almost don't have words, to be honest with you, because I had also looked at other people's experiences, and I remember one in particular that she said that she felt him in a certain way, and I mean like that she felt warm all over, I guess, is she had a flush, something like that. And I remember thinking, and she knew she was saved, and I remember thinking, well, then I must not be saved because I didn't feel that. Mm-hmm. Or you'll have people, and I believe them, there was a lady that had PTSD very badly. She said the sinner's prayer, and then the next day she didn't have any more PTSD. Things like that are very dramatic. Well, I didn't have that. So again, I used to think, well, I must not be saved. And so basically it is personal to each individual. I have never felt anything in my body like warmth. I have never. That has never happened to me. But my own personal experience with Jesus is I'm a writer. I'm a songwriter. I'm a person who is a very creative person, and I have the ability, I wouldn't say it's an ability, but I experience the music. I can hear the songs that I write. I hear them in my head, and I'm not writing, like they're not songs I wrote. I hear songs. I hear music all of the time. And so I just hear it. And so when I hear a melody, like for example, the first song I ever wrote was "Give me a song to sing and I will sing it to the King." I heard that melody in my head. And I wrote it down, and then that's how we write our songs. They're just songs that I hear, and the Bible says that he'll sing over you with rejoicing, or he'll rejoice over you with singing. And my personal experience, I know of one other songwriter, Gwen Smith, she also said the same thing. And so that is predominantly how I experience him, and our relationship is with music, with singing and songwriting. And then, of course, I have a lot of ideas for writing blurbs and blog posts, books, all kinds of stuff like that. And then I just feel like he whispers secrets to me, just things, do you see that over there? Uh-huh. Yeah, well, this biblical principle, or this is that, like, I just feel like he's guiding and warning me for many things that I'm too dumb to see coming, honestly. And there's so many things that I would have just walked right into, and I feel like, don't do that. Why? Oh, don't do it, But so, it's very individualized how God speaks to us. And then, of course, with reading the Bible, when you actually see what he does versus so many things that we read about in church, and I know this might offend a lot of people, but we'll read about how he cares for the least of these, and then we'll go out and then we'll give attention to people that are not the least of these. We give more attention to people that already have a lot of attention, or we'll give more money to people that already have money, or we'll do things. It's like, well, Jesus noticed the bleeding woman, for example, or you see all these things. It's completely upside down. But anyway, I didn't mean to go into all of that, but yes, it's very personal, because it's obviously a personal relationship. The relationship that my child has with me is different than she has with her dad, and we're all living here in the same house. And so, but yeah, that's absolutely the truth. And so I would ask you to tell our readers, our listeners, where they can find you online, where they can find Stolen Jesus, and get a copy for themselves.
So you can find me online at sacredgroundstickyfloors.com, and I'm also on Facebook. If you just type in Jamie Amerine, Sacred Ground Sticky Floors. Twitter, it's at Jamie Amerine. And on my my website, sacredgroundstickyfloors.com, there is a book page that will take you to all of the links where it can be purchased. Barnes & Noble has it on sale right now for $10.99 for the PDF or the ebook. And then, of course, Amazon carries it. And it's on Amazon been number one in Christian inspiration. It bounces back and forth to number two with another older book. But then in religious humor, it's been in the top 100 ever since its release. So it's done really well on Amazon. So Amazon and Barnes & Noble are the two main places. And actually, in Barnes & Noble, in stores in Barnes & Noble, it is from, October 23rd of this year through the end of the year. It'll be on the end cap of the Christian Living section. So pretty excited about that.
Oh, yeah, that is exciting.
That was a huge blessing. Really thankful to Barnes & Noble for their, they've been very pro Stolen Jesus. So they've really looked out for me, and Harvest House has been really pleased with their efforts to make sure that people are seeing it and hearing about it. So that's really cool. And I'm honored by that as a first-time author. So if you have a Barnes & Noble near you, I strongly encourage you to try and get it there. But there's a lot of Prime members out there, and they like that free shipping too. So.
Oh yeah, for real.
Yeah.
All right.
And then Christian Book also has it. I think you can get it. I'm about positive that you can get it at Target.com, Walmart.com. So anywhere you type in Stolen Jesus, you should be able to find him.
All right. Well, that sounds great. And I thank you so much, Jamie Amerine, for being on Mountain Heartbeat today.
Thank you so much for having me, Rosa.